The house felt bigger the second my parents' car disappeared down the road. I stood at the living room window and watched the taillights shrink between the trees until they were gone completely. No neighbors close enough to notice anything. No streetlights past the curve. Just our driveway, the dark stretch of road, and the wall of forest behind the yard. They'd be gone at least a week. 7 nights. My phone buzzed before I'd even stepped away from the window. "You good? We still on? Don't chicken out." I didn't. By sunset, the house no longer felt quiet. It sits just outside town, far enough that delivery drivers complain and friends always ask for directions twice. Behind it, the backyard slopes slightly toward an old wooden fence. Past that fence, the forest starts immediately. Thick trees, no trails, no lights. Just dark. There's a wide terrace running along the back of the house with sliding glass doors that open straight into the living room. During the day, it looks harmless. At night, it feels like a stage facing something that doesn't clap. But that night, none of that mattered. Cars pulled into the driveway one after another. Music started low, then got louder. Someone dragged speakers into the kitchen. Someone else opened my parents' liquor cabinet like it was a treasure chest. By 9, the house was full. People were everywhere, laughing, yelling, bumping into furniture. Shoes kicked off near the door. Someone spilled beer on the rug. A couple of guys were already arguing about music. It was chaos in the best possible way. I'd never had this before. Not this kind of noise. Not this kind of freedom. "Tyler, you legend!" Brad shouted, slapping me on the back as he walked past with 2 bottles in his hands. I grinned like I owned the place. Which, for a week, I did. The music pounded so loud the walls vibrated. Windows rattled slightly in their frames. The bass carried through the terrace doors and into the yard. Every time someone slid the glass open to step outside, the cold night air rushed in along with the sound spilling into the dark. People drifted in and out of the backyard, laughing, talking, checking their phones. The floodlight above the terrace lit up part of the grass, but beyond that it was pure black. The fence cut the yard in half, and beyond it the forest stood completely still. No one paid attention to it. Inside, everything felt alive. Jenna showed up later than most, already flushed from drinking somewhere else before coming over. She tossed her jacket on the couch and immediately grabbed a cup from the counter. "This is insane," she shouted over the music. "Your parents really just left?" "For a week," I yelled back. She laughed and disappeared into the crowd. By 10:30, the house felt packed. People were dancing in the living room. Someone had climbed onto a chair in the kitchen. Phones were out, recording everything. The terrace door was half open, letting in cold air that mixed with sweat and alcohol. It was loud, uncontrolled, perfect. That's when Jenna screamed. It wasn't playful. It wasn't dramatic. It was sharp and panicked. The music kept going for a second before someone killed it. The sudden silence made the scream feel even worse. Jenna stood near the terrace door, her hand pressed against the glass. She wasn't looking at us. She was looking outside. "What?" Brad laughed nervously. "You see your reflection?" She shook her head slowly. "There's something out there." A few people groaned. Someone muttered, "Here we go." I stepped closer, pushing through the group gathering behind her. The yard looked the same as it always did. Grass glowing under the floodlight. Fence. The edge of the trees. Nothing moved. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "It was right there," she whispered. "Near the fence." "There's nothing there," someone said. "You're hammered." Her breathing got faster. "It wasn't a deer," she said. "It was standing up." That made a couple people laugh. "Standing up?" Brad repeated. "Like what, a raccoon?" Jenna's face had gone pale. She leaned closer to the glass. "It was small," she said. Like this tall." She held her hand about waist height. "But its face—" She stopped mid-sentence. Her body stiffened. Then she screamed again, and collapsed. She hit the floor hard enough that everyone jumped back. For a second, no one reacted. Then people rushed forward. "Jenna! Is she breathing? Did she hit her head?" She lay there unconscious, eyes closed, chest rising shallowly. Someone splashed water on her face. Someone else fanned her with a napkin. After a few long seconds, she gasped and blinked. Her eyes darted immediately to the terrace. "It's still out there," she whispered. "There's nothing out there," Brad said, forcing a laugh. "You freaked yourself out." "I saw it," she insisted. "It was looking at me." "Looking how?" She swallowed. "Its eyes were sunken, like holes. And its mouth—" She cut herself off. People started snickering again. "Okay, horror queen," someone said. "You watch too many movies." "You drank too much," another added. "You just scared yourself." Jenna looked around at everyone. No one looked scared. No one looked concerned. Just amused. A little annoyed the music had stopped. Embarrassment replaced whatever fear had been in her face. "I'm fine," she muttered, sitting up slowly. It was probably nothing. "That's what I thought," Brad said, clapping his hands. "All right, back to it." The music came back on, louder than before. People drifted away from the terrace, already losing interest. Someone helped Jenna onto the couch. She stayed quiet, staring at her cup, but she didn't leave. I stepped up to the glass and looked out one more time. The yard was empty. The floodlight buzzed softly overhead. The fence cast a straight shadow across the grass. The trees stood still. No movement, no shape. Nothing small, nothing deformed. I told myself she imagined it, or wanted attention, or the alcohol hit her harder than she thought. Behind me, the house was alive again. Laughter, shouting, music pounding through the floor. The party hadn't died. If anything, it got louder. And outside, beyond the light, the forest swallowed everything just out of sight. Inside, no one felt threatened. Inside, we were untouchable. The party didn't crash. It thinned. Around 1 a.m, people started checking their phones, calling rides, arguing about who was too drunk to drive. The music lowered from reckless to background noise. Empty cups covered the coffee table. The air felt stale. Jenna left without looking at me. She avoided the terrace door when she walked out. By 2, only a few of us were left. Brad and 2 others finished what was left in a bottle and stumbled toward the driveway. Headlights swept across the living room walls as cars pulled away one by one. Then it was quiet. Not completely silent. Just normal quiet. The kind you notice only after hours of noise. I locked the front door, checked the windows, stood in the kitchen for a moment, letting the house settle back into itself. It felt smaller now. The forest behind the yard looked darker without the music spilling into it. I told myself I'd clean a little before going to bed. I gathered bottles, threw trash into a bag, wiped the counter with a paper towel that just smeared everything around. The house creaked occasionally, the way old houses do when they cool down at night. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, just the aftermath of a good night. I was standing near the sink when I heard it. A soft knock. Not on the front door, on the glass. 3 light taps against the terrace door. I froze. For a split second, my brain refused to process it. Then I laughed under my breath. "Very funny," I muttered. "Someone must have come back. Maybe they forgot a phone. Maybe Brad thought it would be hilarious to scare me after Jenna's little scene earlier." I walked toward the terrace slowly, wiping my hands on my jeans. The backyard was lit the same way it had been all night, floodlight glowing pale yellow over the grass. The fence line sat quiet. The trees stood behind it like a wall. I slid the door open. Cold air rushed in. "Brad?" I called out. No answer. I stepped outside onto the wooden terrace. The boards creaked under my weight. "Seriously?" I said, louder now. "If this is you, I'm not impressed." The yard was empty. I walked down the 2 small steps into the grass, scanning left and right. The fence, the shed near the back corner, the dark edge of the woods. No movement, no cars in the driveway. Nothing. I shook my head. Probably the wind, or the house settling, or my imagination catching up to Jenna's story. I turned back toward the house. The terrace door was closed. I frowned. I was sure I'd left it open. I climbed the steps and grabbed the handle. It didn't move, locked. For a second, I just stared at it. I hadn't locked it. I knew I hadn't. I pulled harder. The handle rattled, but the door stayed shut. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered, more annoyed than scared. I leaned closer to the glass, trying to see if maybe the lock had somehow slid into place. The living room beyond it looked empty, lights still on, bottles still on the table. I reached into my pocket for my phone to call someone inside. That's when I felt it. The air behind me shift. Not wind, pressure. Like something had stepped closer without making a sound. I slowly turned around. It stood near the middle of the yard. Not at the fence, not at the edge of the trees. Closer. It wasn't tall. Maybe 4 feet high at most. Small enough that from a distance you might mistake it for a kid. But it wasn't shaped right. Its arms hung too long, nearly brushing the grass. Its shoulders were narrow but rigid, like the joints didn't bend normally. The head tilted slightly to one side. The floodlight caught its face just enough. Its eyes were deeply sunken, dark hollows that didn't reflect the light. The skin around them looked tight, stretched unevenly over bone. Its mouth hung slightly open, revealing teeth that were too long and too thin, more like needles than anything human. Its hands. Not hands. They ended in curved, claw-like fingers, long and narrow, flexing slowly as if testing the air. It didn't move toward me. It didn't lunge. It just stood there, watching. For a second, my brain tried to do what it always does. Rationalize. A prank, a costume, someone messing with me. But no one could hold that posture so still. No one could stand like that without swaying. Its head tilted further. Then it took one step forward. The movement was wrong, too smooth, too deliberate, like it had practiced walking the way we do. My throat tightened. "Hey," I said, my voice thinner than I expected. "This isn't funny." It didn't respond. It just kept looking at me. And then it smiled, slowly. The corners of its mouth stretched wider than they should have. And it spoke. "You're finally alone." The voice did not match the body. It came from the small figure standing in my yard, barely 4 feet tall. But the sound was deeper, worn down, like something that had spoken through dirt for years. I tried the terrace door again. Locked. I had not locked it. "I don't know what you are," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "But you need to get off my property." It tilted its head. "I've been on your property longer than you." The floodlight caught its face clearly now. The skin looked stretched unevenly over bone. Its eyes were hollowed, dark and sunken. Its mouth hung slightly open, showing long, narrow teeth that did not fit its jaw properly. "I live here," it said. I shook my head. "No." It lifted one clawed hand and pointed down at the ground. "Under the house." Something cold moved through me. "That's not possible," I said. "It is," it replied calmly. "I have been here since before you could walk." My breathing changed without me realizing it. It took one slow step closer. "You cried at night when you were 6, it continued. "You thought something was scratching under your bed." My chest tightened. "You told your mother there were noises." I remembered that. I had. "You stopped telling her when she said it was pipes." My grip on the door handle slipped. "You stopped checking under the bed when you turned 10. The air felt heavier. "You moved your desk against the wall because you didn't like the sound." I had done that. It had been a stupid childhood phase. That's what my dad said. "I know your room," it said. "Second door upstairs, window facing the trees." My mouth went dry. "I know when you stay up late. I know when you stand at that window." It wasn't guessing. It wasn't random. It was specific. "I watched you grow," it said. The words were not dramatic. They were factual. "You were small once." Something shifted under the terrace boards. A scraping sound, directly beneath me. I stepped backward. "You had friends over before," it continued. but not like this. The scratching moved toward the house. You were never alone long enough. I pulled the door open. This time it gave. I stumbled inside and slammed it shut, locking it immediately. I shoved the coffee table against it and dragged a chair under the handle. Outside, it did not rush me. It stepped onto the terrace slowly. I waited, it said through the glass. The scratching came again. Not from outside, from underneath the floor. I froze. The sound dragged along the beams beneath the living room. Slow. Intentional. It moved toward the center of the house. You brought them, it said. Too many. The sound shifted beneath the hallway. I hunt when it is quiet. The scratching reached the wall beside the terrace door. The drywall vibrated slightly. My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it. I live below, it said. You live above. A hard knock came from under the floorboards. The light fixture above me trembled. I backed into the kitchen. The scratching followed. It traveled under the floor from the living room to the tiles beneath my feet. You thought it was pipes, it said. The sound stopped directly below me, then started again, slower, deliberate. You thought it was animals. I could see the terrace from where I stood. It was no longer there. It had disappeared from the yard. I know when your parents leave, it continued. The voice did not come from outside now. It sounded like it came from the walls. I know when you sleep. A heavy impact hit beneath the living room again. The glasses in the cabinet rattled. You were alone tonight. I grabbed my phone and dialed Brad. It rang once. The scratching resumed under the kitchen floor. Twice. It moved toward the base of the cabinets. 3 times. Brad answered. Dude, what? Come back, I said immediately. Right now. He laughed. You serious? There's something in the house. Another loud thud hit beneath the floor. The sound echoed through the wood. What are you talking about? It's under the house, I said. I swear it's under the house. Silence on his end. You're drunk, he said. I'm not. The scratching climbed. It moved up the inside of the wall behind me. The drywall made a faint cracking sound. Brad, please. The sound reached shoulder height, then stopped. I turned slowly. The wall beside the refrigerator bulged inward slightly, like something was pressing against it from the other side. It was easier when they were here, the voice said. The bulge shifted. Too many eyes. The drywall creaked. You are alone now. Brad's voice sounded distant. Tyler? A sharp, dragging scrape ran across the inside of the wall. Dust fell from the seam near the ceiling. It is time. I backed toward the staircase, phone still pressed to my ear. Brad, get back here, I whispered. The scratching dropped suddenly. From the wall, back down, under the floor, it moved fast this time. Across the living room, toward the front door. The front door handle rattled. I stopped breathing. It rattled again, then stopped. Silence. Brad was still on the line. Tyler, what's going on? The scratching resumed, this time directly beneath the living room, closer to the center of the house, and it was moving toward me again. Brad did not believe me at first. Neither did Jason. I could hear it in their voices through the phone. They thought I was drunk, thought I was trying to scare them because of what Jenna had said earlier. For a moment, I almost doubted myself. The house was still. The scratching had stopped. Nothing was moving. Then something slammed against the underside of the living room floor hard enough to knock a picture frame off the wall. Brad stopped laughing. What was that? He asked. Get back here, I said. Right now. There was a pause. Then, we're turning around. I stayed on the line until I saw headlights sweep across the front windows again. The knocking under the floor resumed while I waited. Slow. Controlled. Moving from one side of the house to the other. Not random. Not animal. The front door rattled once from the inside. I unlocked it just as Brad and Jason rushed up the steps. They both stopped when they saw my face. You're not joking, Jason said. No. Brad stepped inside first. "Where is it?" "Under the house." They exchanged a look. "That's not possible," Jason muttered. Before I could answer, the scratching returned, directly beneath us. All three of us looked down at the floor. It moved, not dramatically, just a slight pressure from underneath, like something heavy shifting between the beams. Jason grabbed the fireplace poker. Brad ran to the garage door inside the house and came back with a hammer. He tossed me a baseball bat from the hallway closet. "This better not be some sick prank," he said. "It's not." A loud crack echoed from the wall near the terrace door. The creature burst through, not from the floor, from the drywall. It split the sheetrock open with both clawed hands and pulled itself into the living room. Dust and insulation spilled across the floor as it dropped down onto the hardwood. Up close it looked worse. Smaller than any of us, barely 4 feet tall, but compact and dense. Its arms were too long for its frame. Its spine curved slightly forward. Its eyes were hollowed deep into its face, and its mouth opened wider than before, revealing rows of thin, sharp teeth. Jason swung first. The fireplace poker connected with its shoulder. It barely reacted. Brad charged with the hammer and struck its side. The sound was solid, like hitting packed wood. The creature turned its head toward him slowly. Then it moved, faster than it should have. It grabbed the baseball bat out of my hands mid-swing. I felt the impact jar my arms, but it didn't let go. It leaned forward and bit down. The wood splintered instantly. The bat snapped in half between its teeth. Brad cursed and swung the hammer again. The creature caught his wrist with one clawed hand and yanked him forward. With its other arm, it ripped the hammer from his grip and hurled it across the room. The hammer crashed through the front window. Glass exploded outward onto the lawn. Jason lunged at it again, but the creature moved low and fast, knocking him sideways into the coffee table. The table flipped over, crashing into the wall. It was small, but it was strong, stronger than any of us. It grabbed Brad by the collar and lifted him halfway off the ground. Brad kicked at it wildly, landing a weak hit against its side. The creature did not even look at him. It tightened its grip. I scanned the kitchen desperately. Drawer, knife block, counter. My hand landed on something cold. Scissors. I ran at it from behind. The creature turned slightly, distracted by Jason trying to pull Brad free. I drove the scissors forward with both hands. The blades sank into its back just below the shoulder. It let out a sound that didn't resemble a scream. It was sharper, higher, vibrating through the air like metal scraping concrete. It dropped Brad instantly. The creature twisted around, claws swiping blindly. I fell backward, losing my grip on the scissors. They remained lodged in its back. It staggered once, then twice. A dark liquid ran down its side, thick and almost black under the kitchen light. It looked at me. Not angry, not shocked, just focused. Then it retreated. Not toward the front door, toward the hole it had made in the wall. It pulled itself back through the broken drywall and vanished. For 3 full seconds, none of us moved. "Move," Jason said finally. We didn't argue. We ran. Through the broken front window opening, across the yard, toward the back of the property. The floodlight still burned over the terrace. The hole in the wall behind it gaped open like a wound. We didn't look back. We reached the garden shed near the fence and yanked the door open. It was cramped inside, filled with old tools and lawn equipment. We shoved everything aside and slammed the door shut behind us. Brad pushed a heavy toolbox against it. Jason grabbed a rake and wedged it under the handle. We could hear it now, moving again, not on the grass, under it. The ground between the house and the shed shifted slightly, the soil sinking and rising in small waves. It was circling. We stood shoulder to shoulder inside the shed, breathing hard. "It's bleeding," Brad said. Jason shook his head. "That thing didn't look hurt." The scratching reached the shed. It dragged along the wooden walls slowly, claws scraping across the boards. The sound traveled from one side to the other, then stopped. Silence settled over the yard. None of us spoke. Brad leaned closer to the door and listened. "I think it's gone," he whispered. I wasn't sure, but for the moment, we were still alive and locked inside the shed. The shed was barely big enough for the three of us. It had probably been standing in that yard for decades. The wood was gray and warped from weather, the nails rusted at the corners. Inside, old tools hung crooked on the walls. A broken lawn chair leaned in one corner. There was only one small window near the back wall, too high and too narrow for any of us to climb through. We shoved a metal toolbox against the door. Brad wedged a rake through the handle. Jason stood near the window, trying to see through the darkness outside. None of us spoke for several seconds. We could hear it moving in the yard. Not running, not stumbling, moving slowly. The grass shifted in places, but we could barely see anything from inside. The floodlight near the house didn't reach this far. The shed sat in a darker part of the yard, near the fence line and the beginning of the trees. Then the scratching started again. It dragged across the outside wall of the shed. Not random, not frantic, controlled. The claws scraped along the boards from left to right, testing the structure. The wood creaked under the pressure. Thin splinters fell through the cracks and onto the dirt floor inside. Jason gripped the rake tighter. If it gets through that door? It won't, Brad said, but his voice wasn't steady. The scratching reached the door and stopped. For a moment there was no sound. Then something pressed against the wood. The door bowed inward slightly under weight from the other side. The rake handle groaned where it was wedged in place. My breathing grew shallow. The pressure eased. The scratching resumed, now along the back wall near the window. It moved in slow arcs, as if mapping the shed from the outside. A board near the corner cracked with a sharp, splintering sound. Jason flinched. "It's trying to get in," he whispered. We waited for the wood to break. It didn't. The scratching slowed, then stopped completely. Silence filled the yard. Not distant silence. Close. Heavy. Brad leaned his ear toward the door. "I don't hear it," he said. Jason looked at me. "You stabbed it. Maybe that slowed it down." I didn't answer. My ears strained for any sign of movement. The house stood dark behind us. The broken front window reflected faint moonlight. Nothing moved in the yard. 30 seconds passed, then another 30. No claws, no steps, no shifting grass. Jason lowered the rake slightly. Maybe it went back under the house. Brad stepped away from the door a little, though he didn't move far. "We just stay here until morning," he said. "Sun comes up, we get help." My pulse had started to calm, but something still felt wrong. The creature had not acted like something that retreats. It had waited for years. It would not panic because we stabbed it once. I shifted my weight. The floorboard beneath my foot gave a faint creak. Jason looked down. "These boards are weak." The shed floor sat directly on packed soil and a few old wooden supports. There was no concrete foundation, no slab, just earth underneath. A low sound came from below us, not scratching against the walls. From beneath, a faint scrape against dirt. Brad stiffened. "You hear that?" The sound continued, slow, moving under the center of the shed. My chest tightened. "Get against the walls," I said. We pressed our backs against the boards, spreading our weight away from the middle. The scraping grew louder. Dirt shifted beneath the floorboards. Then came a dull thud from directly below the center of the shed. The wood trembled under our feet. Jason swore under his breath. Another impact, stronger. A crack ran across one of the boards near the middle, thin at first, then widening. The dirt underneath sank slightly. "It's under us," Brad said. The ground beneath the shed was not solid. It had been hollowed out. The third impact split the board completely. A section of floor sagged downward. Dirt fell away into darkness below. I saw it then. A narrow tunnel, carved directly beneath the shed. Not random, not collapsed. Dug. The boards gave way further. One snapped clean through. Another bent downward until nails ripped free with a sharp metallic sound. Jason lost his footing and stumbled sideways, catching himself on the wall. The hole widened. Soil fell inward, and from that darkness below, something moved. A shape rose slowly into view. Its face emerged through the opening. Dirt clung to its skin. The scissors were still lodged in its back. One blade bent outward at an angle. Dark fluid stained its side. but it did not appear weakened. Its sunken eyes locked onto mine. It was close enough now that I could see the dirt packed under its fingernails. Its mouth opened slightly. "You can't get away from me," it said calmly. Jason reacted first. He brought the rake down hard toward its head. The rake struck bone. The creature barely flinched. One clawed hand shot upward through the broken boards and grabbed Jason's ankle. He fell backward with a shout. Brad lunged to grab him, wrapping both arms around Jason's shoulders. The creature pulled. Jason's body slid across the splintered wood toward the opening. He clawed at the floorboards, fingers scraping uselessly against broken edges. "Hold him!" I yelled. Brad tightened his grip, but the creature was stronger. It yanked once, hard. Jason's lower body disappeared into the tunnel. Brad lost his footing and fell forward, still holding on to him. For a second, all three of us were tangled together over the opening. The creature pulled again. Brad's hand slipped. Jason screamed once. Then he was gone, dragged completely into the darkness below. Brad scrambled backward, breathing hard. The floor continued to split. The supports beneath the shed were collapsing inward. The entire center of the structure was compromised. The creature climbed upward through the hole, using its claws to grip the broken beams. It pulled itself halfway out of the tunnel, dirt falling from its shoulders. Brad grabbed a shovel from the wall and swung it at the creature's head. The metal blade struck its temple. This time it reacted. Its head snapped to the side. It hissed, a sharp, vibrating sound that echoed inside the hollow space below. It lunged. One claw slashed across Brad's arm. He stumbled back, blood spreading across his sleeve. I looked toward the door, still barricaded, but the shed was failing. The boards beneath my feet shifted violently. A loud crack split the remaining supports. The entire floor collapsed inward. Brad and I dropped into the tunnel. Dirt and splinters rained down around us. Above, the broken frame of the shed tilted slightly, then settled crooked over the hole. We landed hard on packed soil below. The air was damp and cold. The tunnel extended in both directions, reinforced with roots and old beams. It had been here for years, maybe decades. The creature stood upright in the narrow passage, closer than ever. Its eyes adjusted instantly to the darkness. Behind it, deeper in the tunnel, I could hear movement. Not random shifting, breathing, more than one source. Brad tried to crawl backward. The creature grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the tunnel wall. The earth shook slightly with the impact. I scrambled in the opposite direction, hands slipping in mud. The tunnel branched ahead, multiple paths, multiple routes. It had carved a network beneath the yard, beneath the house, beneath everything. The creature stepped toward me. Slow, confident. It had not chased us. It had herded us. The ground above us remained intact. The shed stood broken overhead. The yard looked untouched. And down here, in the tunnels it had built beneath our feet, it had finally gotten what it waited for. It reached for me as the earth shifted again behind us. The fall knocked the air out of me. I hit packed dirt and rolled onto my side. For a second, I couldn't see anything. Soil and splintered wood rained down from above as the remains of the shed floor collapsed into the hole. Brad landed somewhere to my right with a hard grunt. The opening above us was a jagged square of faint moonlight, already partially blocked by broken beams. Dust drifted through it in thin streams. Then something moved in the dark. The creature dropped down lightly, landing on both feet as if it had done this thousands of times before. The tunnel stretched in both directions. It was narrow, barely tall enough for me to crouch upright. Roots from the trees above pushed through the ceiling in twisted shapes. Moisture clung to the dirt walls. The ground beneath us was damp and uneven. It wasn't a random burrow. It was a system. One path curved toward the house, another sloped deeper under the yard. A third branch disappeared into total darkness. This had been here long before tonight. Long before us. Brad scrambled to his feet first. "Run," he said. We didn't argue. We picked a direction at random and bolted down the tunnel. The ceiling brushed against my shoulders. Roots snagged at my hair. The dirt shifted under my sneakers. Behind us, the creature moved. It did not stumble. It did not hesitate. Its claws dug into the soil as it ran, faster than us in the cramped space. The tunnel split again ahead. We took the left path without thinking. I could smell rot the deeper we went. Old, sour air that hadn't been disturbed in years. Then I saw something half buried in the wall. Bones. Small ones, not animal. A rib cage protruded from packed earth, yellowed and dry. Further down the wall, something metallic caught the faint light from above. A belt buckle. Cloth fragments clung to the dirt around it. This wasn't new. This wasn't the first time. Brad saw it too, but didn't slow down. The tunnel narrowed sharply, forcing us to turn sideways for a few steps. I heard the creature close the distance behind us. Its breathing was steady, controlled. It knew exactly where it was going. We did not. Another branch opened to the right. Jason wasn't there anymore. The realization hit me mid-stride. He had been pulled down first. There had been no scream after that first one, just silence. Brad grabbed my arm and pulled me forward. The tunnel sloped downward now, leading deeper under the property. The ceiling lowered further. Dirt fell loose with every step we took. "This way," Brad said, though he had no idea. We turned again. The passage ended abruptly in a small chamber carved out of packed earth. There was nowhere else to go. Bones lined the walls, old sneakers, a jacket sleeve, scraps of fabric layered into the dirt floor. This had been feeding grounds. Brad turned around. The creature stepped into the tunnel entrance behind us. It did not rush. It filled the narrow space, blocking the only way out. Its eyes adjusted instantly to the dark. Mine struggled. The scissors were no longer in its back. I hadn't seen when they came out. Brad swung the shovel again. The metal blade struck the tunnel wall as the creature sidestepped easily. It grabbed the handle mid-swing and twisted. The shovel ripped from Brad's hands. It slammed him against the dirt wall hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. I lunged forward to pull him back, but the creature's other hand shot out and caught Brad by the throat. It lifted him off the ground despite the tight space. Brad clawed at its wrist, feet kicking uselessly against the dirt. I grabbed the broken shovel handle and swung it at its head. The wood splintered on impact. It did not release him. It turned its head toward me while still holding Brad suspended. Then it tightened its grip. There was a sharp crack. Brad's body went limp. The creature dropped him. He hit the dirt floor without moving. I backed away until my shoulders hit the tunnel wall. There was nowhere else to go. The creature stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. I tried to push past it, but it was faster. It slammed me sideways into the wall, dirt collapsing around my shoulder. My vision blurred. I scrambled to my feet and ran blindly down the only path that remained open, a narrow branch leading deeper underground. The tunnel twisted sharply. I lost any sense of direction. Left, right, downward slope, low ceiling. The air grew colder. My lungs burned from the dampness. I tripped over something solid and fell face first into the dirt. When I rolled over, I saw what I had stumbled across. More bones, layered into the floor itself. This place had been used for years, maybe longer. The tunnel walls bore marks from claws carving through soil, reinforced sections where beams from old structures had been dragged down and wedged into place. It had built this, expanded it, maintained it. The house had never been empty underneath. The yard had never been solid ground. The shed had been standing over hollow earth the entire time. I tried to stand again. A shadow shifted at the far end of the tunnel. It moved without sound. It did not chase anymore. It walked because it did not need to hurry. I understood then. There had never been a way out once we dropped through that floor. It had waited for years under the house. It had listened to footsteps above. It had memorized routines. It had chosen nights carefully. It had waited for isolation. The party had been noise, distraction. It had needed quiet. It had needed one of us alone. The creature stopped a few feet away. Its eyes reflected the faint light from the broken opening far above. I thought of my parents. They were on a beach somewhere, sending pictures, smiling. They didn't know. They had never known. The house had been built over this, over it. It had lived beneath our lives the entire time, watching, waiting. It reached forward, its claws wrapped around my ankle and pulled. The dirt tore at my hands as I tried to grab onto something solid. There was nothing solid, only earth. It dragged me backward into the darkness of its tunnels. Above us, the yard remained quiet. The house stood undisturbed, and somewhere beneath it, the creature settled back into its underground network, waiting for the next night someone would be alone,